Hello everybody, I'm Ajit K. Mishra. I'm here again with a new segment on winning communication skills, and I'll be talking about active listening and the barriers that are there on the way of active listening. So, active listening, as we all know, is a very powerful tool for both personal and professional success, for both personal and professional growth. But it has a few challenges because it has several barriers around it. If we do not take care of those barriers, if we do not remove these barriers from the way of active listening, we are not going to succeed and we are not going to practice active listening. And when we are not able to practice active listening, we will fall far short of our expectations. And that way, we will be short of what we want to achieve. We will be short of success, personal and professional. So, we need to understand the barriers to active listening so that we can think of plans to address, plans to overcome those barriers. I'll take a look at each of these barriers one by one so that you understand what these barriers are, and then you can think of overcoming those barriers by adopting a few strategies. The first barrier to active listening is lack of interest. In fact, lack of interest is a universal barrier to everything. When we do not have interest for anything that we do, we are bound to fail. So, lack of interest is one such thing that can always act as a stumbling block on our way to success. So, when we do not show any interest while listening, while actively listening, so no active listening can be possible. The second barrier is prejudgment. Even before I begin to listen to somebody, if I form biases, prejudices in my mind, then I may not end up listening to the person at all. If I don't like the person, I'll not listen to the person. It may be that the person talks about something meaningful, something important, but just because I do not like the person, I'll not listen to the person, and that way I'll be at a loss. And that's the reason why most people struggle with something that we call intolerance. They are so intolerant of people, their ideas, their thoughts, that they do not find anybody to be as good as they themselves are. So that is a kind of superiority complex that most listeners suffer from. But this is not going to help, because when we have intolerance for others, we are not going to listen to them carefully or attentively, and that will always obstruct active listening. And then deep-rooted beliefs. Every time while listening to somebody actively, if we allow our deep-rooted beliefs to crop up, to come to the surface, they are definitely going to interfere with our listening activities, our listening approaches, because these deep-rooted beliefs may not concur with what we are about to listen to. And when there is a mismatch between our beliefs, those deep-rooted ones, and the content of what we are going to listen to, we will not be interested in listening to that content. And then partial listening is again a major barrier to listening activities or listening approaches. Because when we do not want to listen to the entire content, when we start with an idea to listen to the content partially only, that means we'll go for selective listening, we'll go for biased, prejudiced, we'll go for intolerant listening, and all these listening approaches will end in some kind of problem for both the speaker and the listeners. So, partial listening is a major barrier to active listening. And then this major problem, which with some kind of practice we can overcome, that is inadequate language base. There are listeners who are not familiar with language, or they do not have an adequate base of that language, and that's the reason why they do not understand what is being said, and that's one big reason why they fail to understand, they fail to follow what is being said. They want to listen to what is being said. Since they do not have an adequate language base, they cannot understand what is being said. But with some practice, with some clearly defined objectives, such listeners can overcome the language inadequacy in them and then develop good language skills and become good learners. But for the other barriers to active listening, we need to be very, very careful that we overcome each one of them carefully, so that we do not find them as roadblockers or stumbling blocks on our way to active listening. Active listening, as we all know, is one of the most important indicators of workplace success. If somebody is highly successful at workplace, then we must have to concede to the fact that that person has been a tremendous listener, has been a wonderful active listener, because active listening is invariably associated with workplace success. Workplace success and active listening are complementary to each other. Why? There are several reasons why active listening is so very important to workplace success. It's so crucial to workplace success. The first reason is active listening builds connections. We all want to be connected in some way or the other, because we all are social creatures. When we are social creatures, we like to be connected. We believe in living socially, and we believe in living in a connected manner. So, active listening actually builds connections. So, because it helps others feel comfortable while sharing information with us, and when we demonstrate our ability to sincerely listen to what others have to say, they'll be more interested in communicating with us regularly. And this actually helps us, open up, or this actually helps others open up. And that way it can lead to collaborations, it can lead to joint ventures, it can lead to positive relationships. And all these things can actually help us succeed in our careers. Active listening helps us build trust, because when people know they can speak freely to us without interruptions, without judgment or unwelcome interjections, they will be more likely to confide in us. This is especially helpful when meeting strangers, meeting clients, meeting new people, and then developing some communication with them and building trust with them. So that actually helps a lot. Similarly, active listening also helps us identify and solve problems, because while listening actively to others, we can easily detect challenges and difficulties others are facing, or the problems within certain projects. So, the more quickly we are able to spot these issues, there is every likelihood that we can soon find an answer to these problems. So, active listening actually leads to a great amount of problem-solving activities. Again, active listening helps us increase our knowledge and our understanding of various topics, because when we keep listening to people around us, we're actually adding something to our knowledge base, because active listening helps us retain information. It will help us understand things better, new ideas, new topics better, and then it can also help us remember what we have learned. And then finally, active listening helps us avoid missing critical information. Active listeners are highly engaged with the speaker, and that's the reason why they are able to recall specific details. There are active listening tests given to employees as well, just to check whether they are actively and attentively listening to what is being said or not. So this is especially important when the speaker is issuing instructions and the speaker is training us on a new process, or the speaker is delivering a message. We are responsible for passing along to others. For example, train the trainers programs. When the trainers are trained by a master trainer, and afterwards these trainers are expected to go back and then train the other trainers. So if the trainers do not listen to the master trainers carefully, they will be missing critical information. And when it's their turn to transmit those information to the other trainers, they will be very, very incapable of doing that, because they have not been able to actively listen to the entire thing. So to sum up, I can say that there are certain challenges on the way to active listening. There are certain barriers to active listening, but those barriers can be taken care of. We can easily overcome those barriers, provided we are ready to explore the important active listening approaches. And once we do that, we will be in a position to ensure that we listen actively, and then we can also ensure our success at the workplace. So that's all for this session. I'm sure you have taken note of all these things that I discussed during the session, and you're going to explore them yet further. And I'll be meeting you in the next sessions with some other information on listening skills. So thank you very much for joining me. Bye-bye.